Welcome back to the Construct 3 Minimap tutorial series. We are going to do a second version of a minimap. This one is going to mimic something you would see in a game like Stardew Valley. So a few things are going to change from the first version, but not too much. This shouldn't take too long. First thing I want to do is, if you followed me in the first map version, to make sure that this is saved, that your project is saved. Once you've saved it, then go into the menu, project, and save as. I have a cloud drive that I save mine on, so save yours wherever you save yours. We're going to save a brand new copy. So I called mine Minimap V1. This one I'm going to call Minimap V2. So go ahead and save yours as whatever you want. Just make sure it's a different file name than the other map. Now, once you do that, it only saves the file. The project name is still Minimap V1, so I'm going to change that to Minimap V2 so that we know which one we're actually working on. We already have some of the stuff we need. We have the minimap and the minimap border. So I'm going to go into the event sheet, and in our onStart of layout event at the top, I'm going to resize our minimap. So let's add an action and go into minimap, and I want to set the size. So set size. So before, we set the minimap size to 5% of the layout. Now I want to reference the layout at a little bit bigger of a percentage. So instead of 5%, I'm going to go 20%. So if we get the layout width, and I'm going to multiply that times 0.2, which is 20%. Tab down into the height, and we can do the same thing here. Layout height multiplied by 0.2. Okay, that's going to give us our size. If we play, you can see it has increased, and we still have quite a bit of work to do on it. So let's position it. I want to position it in the middle of our viewport. So instead of trying to figure out the actual coordinates of where it would be at that size, we can just reference the viewport's width and height and place it right in the middle. So in our event sheet, let's add an action and get our minimap again. And I want to set the position. So for the X, I want to get that viewport width. We have to tell it what viewport we want to get. And the viewport is for our map layer. So in parentheses and in quotation marks, we want map. And it will not recognize it unless we have it in parentheses and that the map layer is in between quotation marks. This would put us at the very end. This would say the viewport width, which is 1280. It would put the origin point, which is in the top left of the minimap object, at 1280. So I want to come back in to the middle of the viewport, and we can do that by dividing it by 2. So that'll put us in the middle, and I'm going to just hit done for right now. Play this. It's now off to the right, but this side is in the middle of the viewport. So we really want to come back to the left a little more, and since we have an origin point in the top left, we need to get the value of the center of the minimap. So in our event sheet, let's go back into our set position. Let's subtract the distance from the middle of the minimap to the edge of the minimap. And we can do that by putting all of this in parentheses first. In parentheses, we have viewport width, and then our minimap or our map layer divided by 2 in parentheses. And then we want to subtract another equation. So in parentheses, we will get the minimap dot width, and we will divide that by 2 as well in parentheses. So we have 2 different equations here, the viewport width divided by 2 and the minimap width divided by 2. Let's do the same thing for the Y. So in parentheses, we want to go viewport height, and that viewport in parentheses is going to be the map, which is in quotation marks, and divided by 2 end parentheses. Then we want to subtract beginning parentheses minimap dot height divided by 2 end parentheses. That will put it right in the center of our screen. Okay, now we can do the same thing with our border. So let's add an action, get our map border, and we want to set the size we already have the size of the mini map figured out, so let's just reference that. Our width is going to be the width of the minimap.width. And remember, we had a 4 pixel thickness of the border, and we had to add 8 pixels so that we would have 4 pixels on both sides. So let's add 8 here and come down here, do the same thing. Minimap.height plus 8. And then now we need to set the position of the border. But if you remember, we go into our map border object, the origin point we put in 4 pixels from the left and the top. I'm actually going to put the origin point in the top left, so it'll be 0, 0 for X and Y. So now we can add an action, get our map border, and we want to set the position to minimap.x. And we want to subtract 4 pixels, so that gives it a 4 pixel thickness on the left. And because we made it 8 extra pixels, there will be 4 pixels left over on the right. And then do the same thing for our y, minimap.y minus 4. And that should give us a small border around our map. Okay? Go ahead and save while we're thinking about it. Okay, in our for each loops, this is actually pretty easy because up here we change this to 0.2 for 20%, whereas in the first version we had 0.05 for 5%. So down here where we have this set up for 5%, we can change all of these to 0.2 for 20% instead of 5%. And we want to do the same thing anywhere where we have that 0.05, we want to change it to 0.2. I'm just going to go through here and change all these to 0.2. All right, if we play that, now everything is in the correct place. And you can still see our little icon up there. We will get that changed here in a minute. Okay, let's create a group. I'm going to right click in this empty area, add group, and I'm going to call this map. So we want to be able to call for the map and then get rid of the map. And we can do that with one variable. So I'm going to select our minimap object in the project panel, come over here to the properties and edit instance variables. Add a new instance variable, and I'm going to call this map active. And I'm going to change the type to a boolean, which is true or false. Hit OK. And we'll exit out of that. And I'm going to use the M key on the keyboard to call our map. So we're going to need the keyboard object in the game. So in the project panel, let's right click on the object types folder, add a new object type, and down under input, we have keyboard. Let's insert that. And then we can add an event to our map group. Go into our keyboard object. And I want on key pressed. And that is going to be the M key. When we press the M key, I want to be able to change whether or not that map active is true or false. So let's set up the true and false conditions. In our map group, let's add another event, go into our minimap, and scroll down to the instance variables, and we have is boolean instance variable set. And map active is the one we want to check, and what it means by is set means it's true. So if our map active boolean variable is true, it means we can see our map. So I'm going to add an action here, and I'm going to go into system, and I'm going to type in layer visible. I want to set layer visible, and the layer is going to be in quotation marks, the map layer, and I want visible. If it's not true, then I want to make it invisible. So if we highlight this whole block of code, instead of checking to see if it's false, I'm just going to use an else statement. Highlight the whole block, press X on the keyboard, and that gives us an else statement. I'm going to highlight this action, hold Control on the keyboard, click and drag a copy down, and then we can go into this one and change visible to invisible. So the way we can change between these two variable settings is with our M key. So in this event, let's add an action to our onImPressed and go into our minimap object and scroll down to instance variables, and we can just choose toggle boolean. This way we don't have to set its true and set its false separately. We can just toggle it each time we press the M key. So toggle boolean, map active is the one we want. And I want the level to start out false. I don't want the map on screen until we press the M key. So up here in onStart of layout, let's add an action, go into our minimap, scroll down to instance variables, set boolean, and map active to false. Okay, let's play that. And we have no map. And if we press M, there's our map. And we can still move around. We are going to change that. And then I press M again, map is gone. Map on, map off, map on, map off. Now I don't want our player to be able to move when the map is up. That's just a feature I wish to implement into this project. Yours may be different. But while our map is active, I'm going to add an action, go into our player, and our controls are the 8 direction behavior. I'm going to set enabled to disabled. And then whenever our map is not active, we want this to be opposite. So I'm going to highlight that, control, click, drag down a copy, go into it, change disabled to enabled. And if we play that, now if I move and I press the map, you can hear me pressing my arrow keys, nothing happens. I turn the map off and the map goes away. Now, this is another issue. If I am moving while I press the map, I can let off the controls. I'm not touching the keyboard at all. The only thing I'm going to touch is the M key. You see that our player moves a little bit after that. That is because we basically paused the 8 direction behavior. And whenever we turned it back on, it finished the values that it still had in it. And those values are its vector movement. So to stop our player from moving once the map has been called, we can reset those vectors to make sure that it doesn't move and look all awkward after we turn the map off. So while map is active, after we disable the 8 direction behavior, I'm going to add an action, go into our player, and in our 8 direction behavior, set vector X to 0. Do it again, add action, player, set vector Y to 0. And then, now if I hit the map while I am moving, and then let go of everything, undo the map, and no more movement. Okay, so we still have the issue of our player icon. Whether the map is visible or not, our icon is moving around on the screen. We just can't see it when it's turned off. But I don't need that because the style of map we're creating, we're not moving while the map is active, so we don't need to move the icon while we're not looking at the map. So I'm going to move both of these actions, the set angle and set position, down into the onImPressed. And our position is going to need to be changed because we are no longer referencing the player's position by 5%. We are referencing it by 0.2, which is 20%. Okay, let's play that. And if we hit M, there is our icon. It's in the correct place. If we go all the way to the top, there is our icon. So it is referencing the correct position on the map. So at this point, if you wanted to, you could go back into your layout and click on the icon player. We changed it to 6x6. You can increase this. I'll go, let's say 10x10 and play it again. This time our icon's a little bit easier to see since we're dealing with a little bit bigger scale. So there it is. And it's right up against the edge. Our calculations are correct. Okay, back on the event sheet, one last little cosmetic thing I want to add. This is just for effect. Whenever we are playing the game and we hit map, this is just an overlay. I'd like that map to really stand out a little more. So I'm going to come over here to our layers panel. I'm going to right click add a layer to the top, and I'm going to call this map fade. And I'm going to drag that down below map, but it has to cover background and level, but it has to be under the map layer. Back on our layout, I am going to create a new object on our map fade layer, double click, and I'm going to go down to tiled background, and I'll enter this somewhere over here, and it doesn't matter what size. I'll go, let's say 128 by 128, and get a solid black color and paint bucket, fill that in. There we go. With our map fade layer selected, we need to change that parallax to 0, 0. That way we can just cover this viewport area of this layer. Make sure all of the viewport, you can even see those lines, the boundary of the viewport. And I'm just covering a little bit more than the viewport to make sure that we get the whole viewport covered. And if I play this, solid black, okay? If I play this and I hit the M, there's our map because it is on the layer above our fader. Okay, back in the event sheet, when the map is active, I want to fade that background or darken it a little. So let's add an action and go to our tiled background here, the solid black one. I should have renamed it, but we'll get that and we'll set the opacity to 70%. We'll still be able to see through it. And then I will control, click, and drag a copy down to our else statement, go in here and set it to 0% here. And actually, I'm going to select the object and just rename it map fade. Okay, so let's play that. And when we call for the map is in a lot brighter color than everything else. The background is kind of faded out a little. And then when we turn the map off, everything comes back. Okay? That is map version 2. The next version is a little bit more complicated, but requires a lot less code. We will get to that in the next video for Minimap version 3. That's going to be it for this one. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to save, and I will see you in the next video.